I have a non-standard background through computer science. The top advice that I have is to stay focused. If you think of it as a runner, you have sprinters and you have people who can run at longer distances. And it's more the longer distance cadence that you want. A person who can put in effort every day and make consistent progress every day versus the person who can run and make a lot of progress over just a couple days, but then be burned out and exhausted.
Welcome to another episode of AllAboutAI.com exclusive interview series. Today, we have Brian Riss, the president and founder of Devra. We'll be exploring his journey, the challenges he has faced, his achievements, and his vision for AI in software development. Let's get started.
I have a non-standard background through computer science. We're starting in mathematics and then progressing through learning software on my own and eventually like moving into the field of data science, but still sticking with software development. And the inspiration for developing the Devra software was an enthusiasm and an inspiration by the ChatGPT breakthrough and their API that they made available. And when developing software, I found myself doing repetitive tasks using that ChatGPT tool. To have proper output from the model, you need a thorough context. You need for it to know about your existing code and what frameworks you're using, and like the entire code base essentially needs to be understood by the model. And to do this by hand with the online tool required a lot of copying and pasting and redescribing what the project should be doing every time. And so the software I created, which anybody can download and try out. It hooks into the API and it gives the AI agency to explore your code base, and also it then asks if it can update it with logical updates according to whatever task you're giving it. So you don't have to do the copy and pasting to get the context right. And then for the output, you don't have to copy and paste to get it back into your code base. It's all within one workflow. Gosh, I do love music. I think I don't I, all of my friends are better musicians than me, but I feel that the way that I fit in is that I'm good at writing music, but I'm not good at playing music. And they're all very good at playing music. But then how does it fit in with data science is if they feel like the same thing. It's hard to describe, but I just feel like the same creative parts of your mind are being used when you're creating a software or analysis as when you're creating music. It's so I can't vocalize or describe how they're related, but they just feel very similar to me. The gap that it addresses is the giving the AI agency to explore and actually make changes within a given code base. And it's very flexible. It works with software, but also if you have data files like CSV files or JSON object data files, it can examine those and create Python Jupyter notebooks as well. So it's a general problem solver. And the gap is that it can do it on its own rather than you having to make very detailed prompts to describe. In terms of market research, there's there wasn't a lot. Like a few weeks before, there was that announcement. Before I came out with my product, there was an announcement for the software Devin.
Okay.
Um, I think a lot of us are familiar with, but um, I just saw a video demo of it, but they didn't have any downloadable software to try out.
Okay.
So I don't truly know what level of competition it brings. I have seen other tools that interface with GitHub
Mhm.
or other source repositories, and they do their code updates there. But um, the gap that Devra fills is it's the only one that I've seen that is a desktop application that interfaces with your your source of your project. That's that is an interesting question. At first, I wanted to call it um, a combination of developer and
Okay.
euphoria, like a very good feeling. So I wanted to call it Devoria,
All right.
but that was too long of a name.
Yeah.
And so I just shortened that to Devra, and then found out that that is an a Hebrew word for bee.
Okay.
I thought that that was a cool idea. Is that in a beehive you have a lot of different worker bees all contributing to the hive um, colony, and so the idea that you have this sort of software agent working for you,
Oh,
um, it made sense to me, and it made for a cool logo
no,
as well.
actually,
The main objectives are to there are a few.
right.
There's when you're starting with no project and you're just starting a project, the main
Okay.
objective there is to go from 0 to 1 very quickly. To go from the blank page to a page that has some code that you can work with.
Okay.
And that's a big problem. There's when you're starting a project, there's so much boilerplate and code that has been solved over and over and over again that it doesn't take a brilliant software programmer to do it. And when there's an existing project, the main objective for Devra is to quickly add new features or to resolve bugs.
Okay.
For example, if there's a bug, if you get an error message, all you have to do is paste in the error message
Okay.
into Devra, and
And
it looks at what source files are affected, and it examines the source code on its own, and it navigates through your project directory to find the relevant files, and then it proposes updates to those files that with a click you can update. So it the objective there is very quick iteration on new features or software updates. Yeah, those it is, I guess, technically platform independent
okay.
in that you are not tied into a specific, like for Copilot, you're not tied into um, a specific IDE or a specific um, source repository. You you can have your source code. It's just text files on your computer. If it can live on your computer, and it doesn't have to be, and there's deployments for Mac, Windows, and Linux, then you can use this AI. So the idea that it is different from these other tools is that it is more generally applicable to a variety of coding situations, and it's more flexible in terms of what environments it can work with. I do think it means more overall more use cases.
Okay.
I use it all the time, and in fact, I used a prototype version to create the software now. And so the software that I have is a Python backend and a React um, and Node front end, and I created both the back end and the front end in less than a month.
Okay.
And it was all because I was able to use this prototype version to help create the new version. And I was able to fly through the code and create unit tests and create new modules and new views, and and stress test it. And so I personally feel have been using the product, and I'm just amazed where the state of AI is right now, and how it can, I feel, triple a person's productivity. It can be for beginners.
Right.
It can definitely, if you are learning programming or learning data science, it it can it can help start projects. And in fact, um, I I am relatively new to a lot of these frameworks that I use
Okay.
in the Devra software. I have never created a React application before,
Okay.
but I was able to quickly create a React application because because I have some basic programming, knowledge. Um, at the base level, most
Mm-hmm.
programming languages are essentially the same.
Same here.
Uh, with some platform specific or language specific nuances. But then with the Devra prototype, it was able to create these React uh, views and routes, and the whole application. And in so doing, I learned React because I knew what I wanted it to do, but not how to do it in React. And so then when I was asking it to create it in React, um, it was the best way to learn the new language because I knew what it should be doing, but then to see the React specific implementation really helped me like quickly understand the new technology. So I think for beginners, it's a great way to start and to learn a
Okay.
new language because you don't have to be afraid of getting it wrong. You can do these basic exercises and learn as you go. Yeah, it's relatively simple.
All right.
The first thing a person does is that they set up a project.
Okay.
So your project is your application that you're building or a specific data science analysis. And with that, there's a general description. And you can kind of think of it as you are hiring a new person to
Right.
work on your project.
Okay.
What do you tell them about your project in order to like best set them up for success? So you would tell them things like uh, what framework it's in, where the major components are, and what they do. What's the overall objective of your project?
Right.
Um, where how to execute unit tests and where the tests are, and other things that you would tell a person who would be working on your project if they were
Right.
going to help you.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that once you do that, you only have to do that once, and then it remembers that and it uses that every time it completes a task. And then once you set up that project, you then um, set up a specific task for whatever you want it to do. You could
Okay.
say, you know, create create a function that sorts this list, or create a function that is a or create a unit test of that function, or create a new view that shows all active users.
Okay.
And you can do these very short task descriptions because you've already described what you want your project to do. So you don't have to repeat
Okay.
that description every time. Your tasks can be very quick and say you could just paste in the bug and it'll figure out, or it'll at least try to figure out the solution to that bug. Or you can say if it's a game, you could say, increase the speed,
Okay.
and it will do the best it can to like figure out how to increase that speed. So the workflow is twofold: to create a project first,
Okay.
and then in that project you create tasks. Oh, I see. Yes, I use it in conjunction with standard tools. So
Right.
I've not gotten rid of my integrated development environment. I still use I still use the JetBrains software or VS Code, um, and those are still very useful because you still do need to like occasionally like figure out what your code is doing and it or when it comes to refactoring your software, like renaming a function, the integrated development environments are great. And so the the way that they work together is that Devra can make some code updates within the project, but then you're still using your integrated development environment to, for example, see what code lines were changed based on the source control,
I see.
or to refactor, or to actually execute the unit tests or other useful things within the conventional tools. So I've found that it fits in very well to the conventional tool set. Right. It uses security libraries within
All right.
the Python and Django environment, and on the server side, there are a lot of security measures as well. And in terms of data persistence, there's data isn't persisted from one task to the next, and so it holds it in memory only as long as it's completing the task, and then purges that memory. So it is sensitive to user privacy. A upcoming feature that I would like to implement is if a is to use an Azure endpoint, uh, so that for a private chat GPT instance, and that way it's not using the OpenAI API instance, which at this point I don't think there's a guarantee that OpenAI is not persisting the data. So there is room for improvement because it is going through an AI API. In the future, it'd be good to go through a private instance of it, but that's a work in progress. Yes, I have seen a lot of I've heard of a lot of success with new feature implementation, at least like getting a project started. Also, when it comes to unit tests, nobody I know likes to write unit tests, and something that can explore your code base and figure out what functions and objects are dependent on each other. And if you say, make a test for this, it does all of the very boring work of like mocking out data structures, mocking out functions, and and implementing that unit test. And um feedback that I've gotten is that it makes that whole process very quick and easy. So it's still a very young software, so there's a lot more of testing going on in terms of like people figuring out what it's best for, but that's the early feedback that I've gotten. I think within the general structure, it supports the developer role.
Okay.
It is difficult. I think we still need the quality assurance step and the employees that support quality assurance. That is a thing that I don't see being replaced by AI anytime soon, because there's a one the output may be consistent. Like there, for example, there may be no bugs. There may be your user interface may be rendered successfully, but then in terms of a quality user experience, I don't see how an AI can properly assess those things yet. Or it may be there might be some sort of function that's returning data to a user, and it may be executing perfectly, but the answer might be wrong, and you still need to validate all the output, just as you would a normal software developer. So it can help with the software development aspect, but
Okay.
you should not take out any of the existing quality assurance measures that within the organization. Well, I got it to um, create a CI/CD script just yesterday.
Okay.
Um, in terms of writing a script for continuous integration, continuous development. I've never been very good at that. It's that the YAML language and like what are the proper like syntax rules for it. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but I did want to have a continuous integration script that ran unit tests for any pull request. That's all I wanted, and that's all I had to type is say for in this case bit bucket for bit bucket, make a continuous integration script to run unit tests for pull requests, and it created the file perfectly.
Okay.
And it was able to where the unit tests were and how to execute those and the system specific properties it needed to set. So to create CI/CD workflows, I found it very, very useful.
Yeah.
Then within Jenkins, it's or within like a CI/CD tool, it it doesn't interfere, but again, it's more like the software development stage.
Okay.
If you think of it as a person developing software, that doesn't affect your Jenkins workflow. It's just another person helping you with your software. And I know I refer to it as a person a lot, but it feels very friendly to me. It feels like a person sometimes. So
Yeah.
I kind of think of it as such. In the next 3 to 5 years, I would like to. I feel like the biggest advances are going to be within the models and the capabilities of those models.
Okay.
And so currently it's using the OpenAI API backend. Um, they just released a new version of their top line model. So there's 4.0.
Okay.
I just came out with 4.0 mini, which is a lot cheaper and faster, but not quite as performant in terms of quality. And I would like to implement some model blending,
Yeah.
and so that's like to use the right model for the right task. So
Okay.
some things could require like a very cheap and quick model.
Yeah.
Others might require the more expensive but thorough model. Um, some models might be better from providers outside of OpenAI. Like there might be a Gemini model to use.
Okay.
Um, there might be an in-house model that we develop that is good for certain tasks. There might be project-specific models.
Okay.
And so I think the future really is in terms of having a host of different models and using them at the appropriate time for a blended output that is both that is cost efficient and and expeditious, very quick,
Yes.
and high quality output as well. I think it is to me it feels like when integrated development environments came along,
All right.
or when spreadsheets were
Okay.
invented.
Yeah.
In the there spreadsheets might be a very good example.
Okay.
Uh, Before there were spreadsheets, uh, people had to do hand tabulations for basically like with pen and paper, columns of numbers and add them manually, or have custom scripts to add things up, and it was very primitive. But then spreadsheets were invented and it revolutionized accounting. And but at the same time, so those jobs had to transform. Is there are not people that are just hosts of people that were doing spreadsheets that are now like unemployed. When the spreadsheet software happened, they had to adapt.
Yeah.
So, and also when integrated and development environments came along, to take text files and have to code that and manually type things and have very long debugging processes. Once IDEs came along, it cut that time in half. But that doesn't mean it cut the workforce in half. It essentially just doubled productivity and it allowed for more complicated software to be produced.
Yeah.
So I see artificial intelligence almost like a very intelligent code completion um, application, in that it it can, I feel, double or even triple a person's productivity. I personally have felt
Okay.
that um, it has tripled my productivity, but I still feel that I am not useless as a person. I
Okay.
still, like, it gets you most of the way there, like
All right.
80% of there,
Yeah.
but there's still the final 20%, and there's still the vision for how it all fits together. And sometimes the solutions it comes up with are not the best logical solutions. So it changes what you have to do, and it increases your productivity, but I do not think it's going to, in the end, make the workforce unneeded. There'll still be plenty of work to do. I feel the advice. I'm still learning myself.
All right.
I wouldn't call myself a young entrepreneur. I am a
Indeed.
middle-aged entrepreneur, uh, and and so I'm still figuring it out. For me, the the top advice that I have is to stay focused.
All right.
For me, I have a job that I have to do for 8 hours a day, and I have children, that I have to account for in the evening and during the day as well. And so my time is very limited.
All right.
So I'm always trying to focus on what is the most important thing that I have to do next. And out of a list of 100 things, what is the one most important thing to do next? And to
Okay.
have that prioritization and to focus and just do one thing after the other. So I don't I don't have any advice for like specific to AI development. It's more about being very focused and and executing on your vision in a procedural way. I have seen, of me and of my friends, it is the people that are persistent.
Okay.
And if you think of it as a runner, you have sprinters and you have people who can run at longer distances.
Yeah.
And it's more the longer distance cadence that you want. A person who can um, do put in effort every day and make consistent progress every day, versus the person who can run and make a lot of progress over just a couple days, but then be burned out and exhausted. The key factors to success is to do something that you have a consistent amount of energy for,
Okay.
and that's a tremendously powerful thing. Um, One of my close friends, he has a popular YouTube channel called
Okay.
StatQuest, and he has just been he had been making videos about statistics regularly, and had, dozens of subscribers, but then eventually they caught on, and now he has over 1 million subscribers. But it was something that he's able to consistently do over the years, and he stuck with it, and he found great success with it. And I think that's a good testament to that kind of diligence and workflow. Well, I definitely recommend to go to Devra.ai. I have a link to a lot of the videos
Okay.
that are demos for the software, and just to see. And then also there's the software, which is freely downloadable,
Okay.
to try it out. I'm seeking people to give me input. If you could use it or think of applications or improvements, I would love to hear them.
All right. Thank you so much for your time, Brian. It has been a pleasure discussing your innovative contribution with Devra. We look forward to seeing how your platform evolves and contribute to impact the AI industry.
Excellent. Well, thank you for this time. I really do appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Take care.